Welcome, Mr. Greene.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is William Greene. I represent myself, standing in opposition to this bill and the other electoral binding bills. I am an assistant professor of political science and assistant chair of the political science department at South Texas College down in the Rio Grande Valley. So I drove all the way up here today to testify against these bills. In particular, these bills, I've been teaching on the Electoral College for about 25 years, and every semester I teach around 150 students on this subject. And so it was my impetus for running to be a nominee for the Electoral College for the Republican Party this past year. And the Republican Party did select me to be an elector nominee. And then on November 8th, I was elected by the people of Texas to be an elector in the Electoral College. I was one of the 2 electors that did not vote for Donald Trump. I voted for Ron Paul in this particular election. And I did not do it because of huge problems with the nominee of the party. I did not do it because of the 100,000 emails that I received from people around the country demanding that I vote for the popular vote winner. I did it because I understand what the Constitution says about the Electoral College. I have researched, written, and spoken extensively on the subject. And what the founders wrote very clearly and specifically, and what they intended is very clear in their writings, separate from the Constitution, as well as at the nominating conventions, the people that spoke on the process for electing our president in the Electoral College manner. And I can say, without hesitation, that these bills, this bill and the other ones that are being presented today, are prima facie unconstitutional. The Electoral College is one of the few remaining vestiges of the federal Republican form of government that our founders set up in the U.S. Constitution, and it's the U.S. Constitution that we should be most concerned with, and not knee-jerk reactions to the events of the day. Those authors of that document were quite clear that electors are to be free agents capable of choosing whomever they believe to be the best qualified person in the country to be our chief executive officer. If you want to statutorily bind presidential electors, you might as well statutorily bind members of the Texas House of Representatives while you're at it. When the people vote you in, they have no control at that point constitutionally over your vote. They can vote for someone else in the next election, but they can't force you to vote a certain way. In the same way, when the people vote in electors, they have no control over them constitutionally. They can vote for someone else next election, but that vote by the elector in the Electoral College is to be a free vote and not bound. And while 29 states, including the District of Columbia, may have laws, those laws have never been tested constitutionally, and when they finally are, and I hope Texas is not one of them that has to go to the Supreme Court, but I have no doubt the Supreme Court will strike down those binding laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greene. Any
Madam
questions
Chair?
for Mr. Greene?
Yes.
Mr. Representative Fallon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, did you give a speech to your congressional delegation?
I did. In fact, the speech that I gave to my congressional district caucus, where I was nominated to be an elector, was very clear that I was coming from a strict constitutionalist perspective, and that the Constitution is what I'm all about. Therefore, I made it very clear I would vote constitutionally. Of course, we had to sign a pledge at that time that we would vote for the party nominee when it came time in the Electoral College.
Did you sign that pledge?
Of course, but I also took an oath when I became an elector, just like exactly like the oath that you take to uphold the Constitution. And a constitutional oath supersedes any pledge, especially a pledge that, in my opinion, is unconstitutional. Though that pledge has been upheld, the oath supersedes any pledge that might be taken, and my oath was to the Constitution of the state of Texas and the U.S. Constitution.
So what you just said there, did you say to the folks that voted for or against you at the caucus?
Absolutely, that I would be.
You said that the vote would be a free vote and you wouldn't be bound?
I wasn't asked that question, but if I had been, I certainly would have.
You didn't, but you didn't offer that up in your speech.
Well, I didn't feel I needed to, because the Constitution is very clear. I would expect that people would understand.
Well, what would have been even clearer was for you simply to. If you give me 1 second,
if you give me a second to answer,
what would be even more clear is if you had said, "I'm going to vote for whoever I feel is the best person for the job? Because that's what you ended up doing.
Well, that's what I ended up doing because that's what the Constitution requires of electors. The thing is, electors can vote for whomever they want to because that's what the Constitution is very clear about. When you propose a bill to put into law, to do something that the Constitution is very clear on, that this is not legal to do under the Constitution, that's what you ought to be concerned about. I mean, again, it's a knee-jerk reaction to the 2016 election. Knee-jerk reactions never end well when it comes to the Constitution. If you ran on constitutional principles, I believe you have a duty to vote against any of these binding electoral bills.
What would have happened, do you think, if you had said to the folks when you were when they were trying to decide who they were going to elect as the presidential elector for their congressional district, if you had said to them very straightforwardly to say, I may vote for our presidential nominee and I may not. I don't know yet. It's going to be up to me and how I perceive the Constitution. Do you think you would have?
I don't have any idea what would have happened if I had.
Do you think you would have won?
I have no idea.
I suspect that you probably wouldn't have been chosen.
You can suspect all you like. The fact is that when the Congressional District Caucus selected me to be one of the nominees to be elector, I went on, and then on November 8th, the people of Texas elected me to be elector, just like they elected you to be a representative. The people of Texas at that point are being represented in a sense by you and by me, but the people of Texas can't tell you, you must vote this way. You wouldn't dream of putting binding legislation in for legislators like yourself that says you must vote this certain way. In the same way, you should not dream of putting in laws that would bind electors in Electoral College. It's unconstitutional and really unethical.
But I think that analogy really doesn't hold water because we're elected to take a myriad of votes, thousands of them. You were chosen to take one vote. Just
and
one.
That one vote
just
must
one.
be constitutional in nature.
Well, obviously we have
not partisan in nature. That is the tradition that has arisen, but that's not the constitutional foundation that we must rely on.
When you say constitutional, I think we are all here would describe ourselves as constitutionalists.
I think you
in
probably
fact,
would.
You have jurors, justices on the Supreme Court that often there's very few 9-0 votes anymore in D.C. in SCOTUS. But they all believe that they are following the Constitution. It's the interpretation of the Constitution that people have differences on, and clearly have one now. We have 29 states in the District of Columbia that bind electors, and they haven't, and they've been allowed to do it, and that has not yet been found unconstitutional.
Not yet.
So that's
no.
the point. Well, and
but
it may never be.
It would be a shame if Texas voted this into law and had to go all the way to Supreme Court. It'd be a waste of taxpayer money to have to defend an unconstitutional law.
It doesn't seem like any of the other 29 states have ever had to do that. I will say one last thing.
Well, they haven't had to yet.
One last thing. I like your tie.
Thank you very much. It's got a coffee stain on it, but nevertheless.
Representative Reynolds?
Other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for my edification, I will concede that I'm not an Electoral College constitutional expert, but you say that you are, correct?
I don't say that I'm an expert. I just have taught it for 25 years.
Okay. And you have a long, I guess, study of the subject, right? Correct?
I have, yes.
Okay. And it is your opinion that what these bills are attempting to do today is unconstitutional?
Yes.
Okay. And you say that with respect to the other 29 states, they have not been challenged in the court of law and went up to the Supreme Court yet, so there's no precedent to go with your opinion or not?
As of yet, they have not. I expect that probably as a result of this election, there will be some things that will end up in the Supreme Court because of a number of the Democratic electors that didn't vote the way they were wanted to.
And so going back to the framers of the Constitution, is your testimony here today that they intended for the electorals to have discretion?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and you say that is undisputed?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so what we're attempting here to do today, you think it's reactionary from the 2016 election?
I think obviously. I mean, these have been proposed before, and thankfully rejected before by the same body. But yes, this is obviously a reaction because immediately after that vote, the governor said, "I want a bill on my desk. I'll sign it." So that's why it was thrown forward.
Well, let me pose this question to you. Then, prior to the 2016 election, have there been electorals that have chosen different paths from the popular votes?
That have chosen a different path.
Right, a different person.
Within states, yes.
Within
sir,
states.
yes.
What about
Yeah.
Texas?
Yeah, in Texas, no. This was the first time in Texas.
Okay, so in 2016, this was, I guess, a time when Texas kind of shook up from the precedent that they've had before of everybody kind of voting in step with the popular vote.
It was unprecedented, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions of Mr. Greene? Thank you, Mr. Greene.
Thank you
for
very
being
much.
here.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your perspective. Curtis Nelson, Chair calls Curtis Nelson.